Thank you guys for being here, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come to your school, intern here, and trusting me with your students to meet with them to do my project. So I'll share with you the results, but I'll first share the problem that I saw that I wanted to look at, and then the research that I did, my results, and what that means for the future. So my thesis question was, what effect does individual counseling have on attendance rates for high school students who have been identified with unexcused absences? And I just had the first month of school to look at this, so there were some students, with very few unexcused absences, but I went off of that, and as you can see, I think that we've got students that are track record to have that, even if it was in the first month of school. The problem with absenteeism is it affects many people. It affects the students because they're more than 2.5 times more likely to be on welfare and twice as likely to be unemployed. It also leads to criminal activity, drug use, and incarceration. And as I saw recently at juvenile hall, those are all students that had been truant at some point in their school career. It affects other students because when they come back to school, it takes away from time the students that have been here. Teachers have to spend time with those students who missed school. It affects the school and district, as you know, as we lose money for every day that they're not here. And it affects the community because they become a working poor, and it takes more resources to train them, and there's more resources for social services that they need, as well as they're more likely to, again, conduct criminal activity in the community while they're not in school. So what the research says is approximately 1 in 10 youth. Is that it? No, the one before it. Approximately 1 in 10 youth from low-income families drop out of school, so that's 10%, compared with 2.5% in high-income families. And here at Scripps, you had, on the SARC report last year, 553 students considered socioeconomically disadvantaged. So if we were to take that statistics, 55 of them are likely to drop out from Scripps. Physical and mental health issues contribute to school absenteeism, and I think because in light of what happened recently, I think a key word in the past few years has been bullying, and I think we're going to see a lot more of mental health and mental illness as a key word we're going to be hearing a lot about. Researchers have found that dropouts often cite the absence of anyone who cared about them as one of the primary reasons for leaving school. And this is, I think, the biggest role as counselors to be here and show that there's one person that cares about these students. But again, the SARC report showed that last year there was 411 students for every counselor, and this year, with one less counselor, that's more close to 500 students. So that's a big responsibility to show 500 students that you care about them. One of the research studies was risk factors and levels of risk for high school dropouts. And what the study talked about is looking at the multiple risk factors for students, not just one. Not just what does at-risk mean. So the results of the study concluded that factors influencing the decision to drop out vary from different sources of risk, and that there should be a range of prevention programs because of the range of multiple risk factors. The multiple risk factors influence the decision for students who drop out, and the rate for students with one risk factor, so let's say they just have a low GPA, 17.1%. For 2 risk factors, 32.5%, and for 3 risks, 47.7%. So you can see the more risk that they have in their life, low socioeconomic status, poor grades, and the list goes on. that percentage gets higher, that they're likely to drop out. As students accumulate risk, they become more likely to drop out, and prevention programs become less effective, which is why early intervention is necessary, especially for these students. And as you'll see with my project, I was meeting with students with multiple risk factors, and it almost did feel like it was a little too late. So the intervention that I did was individual counseling with students and just seeing if this would have an effect with their attendance rates. So when I met with the students, I helped them, a lot of them weren't using Student Connect, Naviance, didn't know how to go talk to their teachers to ask for help, different things like that. Talked about what was going on at home. And when they weren't here, I called home to see what was going on. To show, hey, it's a big school, a lot of people aren't here today, but we care about you and we want to know that you're going to be here tomorrow. So I used a lot of different categories to look at the students and what students I wanted to target. For this project, I initially targeted 20 students, and then with the criteria that I wanted, I got that down to 9 students. And of those 9 students, I was only able to meet with 4 of them because one had ended up in juvenile hall, one was suspended, and 3 had already transferred to a charter school. So within the first month of school, there was more than half of the students had already shown that it was too late to help them here at Scripps. One was a male, 3 of them, so the 4 that I did meet with, one was a male, the other were 3 females, 1 African American, 3 Hispanics. They were all from low-income families. They were all bused in. For 2 of them, Spanish was their primary language. They were all in 10th grade except for 1. They were all on the F list for the first progress report, from 1F to 3Fs. The 1 9th grader came to Scripps with 4 Fs in 8th grade. The other 3 were already in 10th grade here. So their GPAs shows pre and post. 2 of them increased, 2 of them decreased, but they all stayed below a 2.0. This doesn't show you the unexcused absences, so only 1 of them, and 1 who already had only 1 period of unexcused absence, didn't have any of the next grading period, but the rest had all increased. So not the data that I would love to have seen, but we'll go on and talk about, and you can see why. I wanted to meet with them 6 times at least, and I only met with them 1 to 3 times because they weren't in school. They missed so much school that I didn't want to call them out of the classes that they were failing, so there was very minimal opportunities to meet with them. So this just shows you in a graph form the results. The darker color, the number of counseling sessions compared to the number of days that they were absent when I was available to meet with them. And the student 3 who I met with the most and was here the most often was the one who improved her attendance. And this shows the first progress report of their periods of unexcused absences, and then the lighter color is the second progress report. So besides student 3, they're all still missing school. So the implications, what this means. So based on this data, 3 or less individual counseling sessions for students with chronic unexcused absences and lower than a 2.0 GPA may not be enough to increase attendance and academic performance. So these were those students that was 47% 3 multiple risk factors: low socioeconomic status, low GPA, not showing up to school for whatever was happening at home. The research verifies that individual counseling in and of itself becomes less effective for students with multiple risk factors. So, you know, it's just a lot harder. The limitations of my study, there were a few. One is that there's a small sample size, so I was only able to meet with 4 students, so it's hard to tell, you know, real research data and results with the limited poll there. Another limitation was the availability of students to meet. Another one was that because I had targeted at-risk students, they're meeting with their regular counselor, they're meeting with the district counselor, they're meeting with the vice principal, and they're meeting with me. So they're meeting with a lot of people, and it's hard to say, you know, if it's because of that, or if that had anything to do with it, or it's hard to isolate just me meeting with them. And so the findings are largely inconclusive because I plan to meet with them 6 times, and I was only able to meet with them 3 or less. Future research. So since the planned number of counseling sessions was not reached, it would be benefit to, you know, continue to meet with them and see if more counseling sessions would be effective. As well as future research is needed to understand the effectiveness of additional interventions for students with multiple risk factors and to examine the characteristics of at-risk students who drop out. So one of the things in the research that I did was talking about career planning. So students who have a plan for even the next year, what they're going to do in school or what they're going to do beyond school, are more likely to stay in school. So career planning with these students, you know, will that have any effect? So there's more work to be done there. The conclusion: absenteeism was not the only barrier for these students. They display multiple risk factors of academic failure, low socioeconomic status, behavior problems, as well as absenteeism. So waiting until high school to intervene when students have developed these factors already, it may be too late to prevent any dropout. So to help these students stay in school, counselors and administrators need to offer multiple